Welcome to Live Town Hall. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Today, we are live on Facebook Live with the leader of the Ontario Green Party, Mr. Mike Schreiner. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Michael. Good to be here tonight.
Nice to have you as well. Thank you so much. Live Town Hall is an interactive show. We encourage you to talk to us, and you have a direct line to Mike Schreiner. Live Town Hall is interactive, and it's live, and it's brought to you by Live Town Hall. You can reach us at facebook.com/Live Town Hall. And we'll take your questions as we work through the show. I want to talk, first of all, Mike, before we get to the questions, today, the NDP leader, Andrew Horwath, made an announcement, $475 million worth about universal pharmacare. Some of the Ontario Party members have made some disparaging remarks. Others have supported it. As the leader of the Green Party, where do you sit on this announcement by Andrew Horwath?
Well, I certainly think we need a pharmacare program. I'd like to see it done at the federal level because we want to maximize our bargaining power, and we will be able to do that if we can do it across the country, which would then save on prescription drugs. In terms of paying for it in Ontario, you know what, if we weren't having to fund the Premier's hydro band-aid at about $2 billion a year, we'd have money for things like pharmacare.
Well, we're $408 billion in debt. Ontario has the largest sovereign debt of a non-nation.
That's right.
If we look at 475, how do you put a number on pharmacare? But it is one more of those things that we get deeper in debt. How do you mitigate that? Because people want support, but it's just putting us worse in the debt factory.
Yeah, you know what? We want to support people like that. And so one of the ways we can do that is to actually work to prevent illness in the first place. We need to invest more in preventing illness, community health care. Keeping people from being sick in the first place is the way that we can create a healthier population and save money.
Now, I know Guelph is very dear to your heart. You're running Guelph. I know that there has been an issue with regards to Nestle, with regards to the Aberfoyle.
Right. Yes.
And they're basically paying $3.71 for each million liters of water, which is basically, for all intents and purposes, stealing it. Being
Absolutely.
a person from Guelph and it's close to your heart,
That's right.
Where do you stand on this? Do you have any update for us?
Yeah, well, it's just absolutely ridiculous that the government of Ontario, the Liberals, are allowing these companies to essentially steal our water. So what we're advocating for are two things that are really important. Mm-hmm. One is that the permit to take water process should prioritize drinking water for communities first. Public drinking water for communities should be the number one priority. Things like aggregates and bottled water should be down the priority list.
Right.
So if there's any sort of shortage of water, public drinking water first. Secondly, corporate users should pay their fair share. $3.71 is ridiculously low. It only covers 1.2% of the cost of administering these programs. Mm-hmm. So people like you and me essentially are subsidizing these companies by paying the other 98%.
And
I don't think that's right.
Bottled water is more expensive than gasoline.
It is ridiculous.
When you think about it.
And then we as taxpayers have to pay to get rid of all these bottles. So essentially they're putting water in garbage, and then we're paying to get rid of the garbage for them. Absolutely, it's not right.
We're talking to Mike Schreiner. He is the leader of the Ontario Green Party. You can reach us at facebook.com/Live Town Hall. And this event is brought to you by Live Town Hall. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We're going to be here for an hour live taking your questions. Here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Charles
to
wants to know, how do we stop urban sprawl?
Well, I think one of the things we have to do is come up with innovative ways to densify and intensify our communities without it being just this way we're doing it now, which either seems to be high-rises or single-family homes. Why not more mid-rise housing in the middle development? So townhouses, stacked townhouses. We need to start getting creative and innovating with our zoning bylaws.
What about cities that want vertical taxation? The higher up you go, you're multiplying your tax base by floors, right?
We shouldn't be doing it that way. Actually, you should be taxing by land, not by the number of floors, to encourage more intensification. We also need to have things like laneway housing, granny suites, tiny housing. There's a whole host of things like that that can help boost the supply of housing, which would then keep costs down, because the affordability crisis in housing right now. I mean, how many young people can even afford to buy a house in today's market? And so that we have to deal with. But the one thing we can't allow to have happen is the shock and awe of rising prices. We can't let developers use that to say we're going to pave leftover
Okay,
farmland in the green belt.
Puana, I just want to keep us moving here. Puana wants to ask you, how do we cool down the real estate market? I mean, we know what Ontario just talked about, doing a non-resident tax, a vacancy tax, putting in a rent control. How do we, first of all, cool down the real estate tax? And what's your reaction to the non-residency and the rent control?
Well, first of all, housing should be for people, not for speculators. So the Green Party was actually advocating a vacancy tax well before the Liberals came forward with this. So when they did bring that forward last week, we certainly applauded that. And one thing that makes me different from other politicians, I'm happy to compliment the government when they do something well, and I'm certainly going to criticize them when they don't. In this case, they did the right thing. One thing I've been talking with people about is the fact that we have a lot of brownfields in Ontario. This is land that's been contaminated by some sort of business activity or whatever. We need a stronger and better provincial plan for brownfield redevelopment so we can reclaim those lands, make them safe and healthy, and build houses on them.
It is a personal question. You have yet to be elected. We have yet to have a Green Party representative in the Ontario legislature. So there, other than Elizabeth May, and that's a federal position, part of the Green Party as well, but a little bit of a different mandate, if one would say. For the folks out there who are looking at the Green Party as an option, there's three others: a Conservative, Liberal, NDP, but you are the fourth. You are the fourth dancer on the floor. What can you say to potential voters out there that's going to differentiate you from others? Would one say that you lean to one party more in your perspective, or are you totally on a green island yourself?
I tell you what, we're about doing politics differently. We are about bringing honesty, integrity, and policies that work for people, putting that ahead of our own partisan self-interest. You know, people have told me, Mike, you Greens will never get elected because you're too honest. I say, no way. We refuse to play the political games the other parties play. We're going to be honest with people. We're going to tell you exactly what we stand for. If you want change at Queen's Park, and I believe people want change at Queen's Park, they know the status quo isn't working. Vote for a new party with new ideas that are doing politics in a new way that puts people first.
So Max writes, how can we ensure that the large multinational corporations and the wealthy pay their fair share instead of having the general population prop them up with tax breaks, tax avoidance, and moving funds offshore?
Absolutely. We have to make sure that companies pay their fair share. One of the ways we can start with is things like not charging more than $3.71 per million liters, our aggregate levy for water. Back to the Everfoil. Like, we give away our minerals. Our mining royalty rates are way too low. That's Ontario's wealth.
Yeah, but some businesses would say the way to attract business and create jobs is to offer corporate incentives to incentivize companies to move here with their companies and their jobs.
You know what? That approach has not worked. If that approach would work, we'd have zero unemployment, because Ontario has one of the lowest corporate tax rates of any jurisdiction in North America. The thing that we're not doing good enough is supporting our small businesses. I believe in Ontario we have two parties of big business and one party of no business, and the Green Party is the party of small business. We're talking about lowering payroll taxes on small businesses, having smart regulations that differentiate between big businesses and small businesses, so small business owners can go out there, make their businesses work, make them thrive, and create jobs. Most people work for small businesses.
Well, 75%, I was just going to say, you're right.
Exactly.
75% of our economy is based on small businesses who are employing, I should say, 75% of our working population.
That's why we need a party.
19 million people who pay taxes in this country?
Yeah,
35
exactly.
that are working?
Yeah, that is why we need a party at Queen's Park that's going to champion small businesses.
So when we talk about minimum wage and guaranteed wage, that was another thing that Andrea Horwath brought forward from the NDP. They had the weekend in Toronto. And Mark wants to know, would you explain your position on guaranteed annual income and the possible relationship to affordable housing?
Yeah, so the Green Party strongly supports a basic income guarantee. We believe that every citizen in this province should have a minimum standard of living that's at the low income cutoff level. And that way everyone can live in dignity. And we see this as a small government way to address poverty. It's the most efficient and effective way to address
So,
poverty
how
is a
can you
basic
say-
income guarantee.
How can you say it's the most? Is this not the nanny state gone
Absolutely.
insane?
This is exactly the opposite of that,
Okay.
Michael. The nanny state gone insane is a bunch of bureaucrats policing the poor. We're saying instead of those bureaucrats getting the money, the people who need it should get the money. That's the most dignified way to address poverty. We think it's wrong that we're paying people to police the poor. Why not provide those people with the income they need? And it's going to be good for business. I'll tell you why.
I need to know the benefits. I can
Sure.
see someone who has mental disability, physical disability, who are having problems. I get that.
Yeah.
What about, even seniors for that matter as well? Absolutely. So all of those categories should be separated from the other. What about those people who will take advantage of this circumstance and not go and try and get themselves a job because I just got 17 grand? I mean,
Yeah. You know what? All the research shows that the people who don't go out and get a job are oftentimes because they go and get better education, upgrade their skills, and get a better job. And I want to tell you, as a small business owner, having a basic income guarantee is essential to creating a culture of entrepreneurship and innovation. Because if you're going to start a small business, you need economic security. And if we don't provide economic security to people, particularly in this world with precarious work, more artificial intelligence, and robotization, we need more entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need basic income security. That's what a basic income guarantee provides. Those people can go out and become entrepreneurs and innovators, start their own companies, start social
so
enterprises
Richard
and
wants to know,
nonprofits.
where do you sit now? Kathleen Wynne has introduced this. I believe it's being launched in Hamilton. Is it Windsor and Guelph?
Hamilton, Thunder Bay, and Lindsay.
Thank you very much. So it's being introduced, and they're selective people, so you can apply for that, but they will select the people. So do you stand beside Madam Premier Wynne on this then?
You know, we think
Don't
that,
smile at me like that. That's an obvious question.
we think the pilot's a good idea. It's a step in the right direction.
See, you're an honest guy. You said it.
Absolutely. I told you,
I
I will
respect you.
criticize when they deserve criticism.
No,
I will compliment when they deserve a compliment.
I respect
the pilot's
that.
a step in the right direction. But the one thing we really want them to look at is we need to raise the rates for Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Payments. People can't survive on those low rates, especially in today's housing market. And come on, we need to have dignity in this province. We can afford it, especially if we can get rid of some of these scandals that are wasting money.
So tonight's Live Town Hall is brought to you by Live Town Hall. You can connect with us at facebook.com/Live Town Hall. Get your questions in. Again, you have the city of Guelph close to your heart.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, this is David actually who wants to ask, how do you see the Green Party policies benefiting the farmers? I mean, Canada just got called on the carpet by Donald Trump because
Absolutely.
we're dairy farmers. There's a lot of dairy farming that goes on in the Guelph area. How are your policies from the Green Party going to affect?
Yeah, so I call BS on Donald Trump. He doesn't understand supply management, and I hope the Prime Minister stands up for our dairy farmers and supports supply management. The U.S. has their own problems, and we don't want to go down that road. In terms of supporting farmers, I mean, we're the party about local food. I'm a local food entrepreneur, farm kid myself. We're talking about better support programs for farmers. We're talking about programs to support particularly mid-size processors. I want to liberate local beer, local liquor, so they can take those Ontario crops and put it into beverages that we can enjoy. We want to support processing in this province. Do you know that the food and agriculture sector creates 740,000 jobs, about $40 billion to Ontario's economy, the entire sector? We want to support that sector. It's good for the environment, it's good for local economies and communities, and it's good for our health and well-being.
Well, if you can't feed the city that you're working in, you can't eat. And if you can't
Absolutely.
eat, that doesn't happen. James wants to know what's your position on school closures, because something's happening in our communities across this province. Now, some of the school closures, because basically we're not having as many kids because of the fact that it's becoming more expensive, but many schools are being closed and communities are really feeling that effect. What's the Green Party's position on school closure?
Yeah, so we've been calling for a moratorium on school closures until the funding formula is fixed and until we look at how do we get our school boards to work together. I mean, the fact that we have 4 separate school boards in this province means we're spending way too much money on buildings, administration, and busing. We'd like to see those school boards come together, have one French and English public board, so we can take those savings and invest it in our kids' classrooms, Our kids should come first. Their education should come first. That's where the money should go, not to administration.
You're watching Live Town Hall with Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Green Party. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We're here for an hour to the top of the clock. We encourage you to participate at Live Town Hall. So that's at facebook.com/Live Town Hall. Marg wants to ask, I'm concerned about the availability of affordable housing for single or non-single seniors. Even younger people than seniors may have lost a job, and people who have to find housing are unable to find resources due to illness, caregivers. I mean, she brings up a good point. Affordable housing. How would you tackle that? When now we've just had this announcement about you have to have as many affordable housing as new that you're building.
Yeah, so the big thing we would like to support is what's known as inclusionary zoning. And we would make it mandatory across the province that any new development, whether it's a townhouse or a subdivision or rental unit, condo or whatever, would have a certain percentage of affordable housing units in it. And that's good for a number of reasons. One is it makes sure that people who need housing get access to that housing, but also make sure we have mixed communities, so people are of all classes and races and ethnicity are working together to make our community stronger. So would you mandate that
if a developer comes to Mike Schreiner from the Green Party and says, we want to build 700 houses, single-family detached dwellings, two-car garage, that there would have to be a certain portion of that for affordable housing and more condensed? Okay.
Absolutely, and here's why. You know what? Governments can't seem to ever find enough money to deal with the housing backlog. And so we're going to just have this be a continual problem. If you don't make it mandatory, then some developers are going to have a competitive advantage over others. And so it creates a disincentive for that to happen. But if you make inclusionary zoning mandatory, then you put all developers on an even playing field, make it fair for everyone, and we get affordable housing built for people. We should be housing our people.
So Paul has a question. He says, I keep hearing about the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change is failing to protect either the environment or the people from industrial impacts. What needs to be done to change the Ministry of the Environment regarding climate change?
You know, one of the first things that needs to happen at the Ministry of the Environment, also Ministry of Natural Resources, is to put food and water first. How hard is it for our government to say we're going to protect prime farmland that grows our food and protect our source water regions?
Developers would say that would be hard because you're cutting my grass. I want to sit there as a developer. I want to build houses.
Michael, think of how big
that's not me.
No, I know. But I'm just saying, think of how big Ontario is. Yeah. Only 5% of our land mass is suitable for growing food. Half of 1% is prime farmland. We're losing 350 acres a day. That's the equivalent of the size of Toronto. A country that can't feed itself is less secure than a country that can't defend itself. We have to protect our farmland for our food security, our food sovereignty, and also for our economy. So I'm proud to say, but I'm also sad to say, Michael, that I'm the only political party leader in this province who has signed the Food and Water First pledge to protect prime farmland and source water regions. I can't think of a more important commitment that a government can make than protecting our food and water.
Alan Thompson, the mayor of Caledon, came on this program and made a statement that the city of Caledon supplies all the aggregate and all the concrete to build the cities, while someone like yourself from the region of Guelph helps to feed the stomachs and to grow the food. Interesting how that all works. Eric wants to know, how can we fix the overcrowding in our hospitals? Do we just have to throw more money at it, or is there something else that we can do?
Yeah, great question, Eric. This is one of the reasons the Green Party is putting so much emphasis on preventing illness in the first place. I mean, we have a sick care system, not a health care system. So we need more investments in public health, community health care, family health teams. We need a dental program. We need these kinds of programs that will help people stay healthy so they don't have to go to hospital. So that way, for the people who need hospital, they have those resources available for them when they need it. And in particular, we need a better aging at home strategy. I know the government says they have an aging at home strategy, but we need a better system so seniors in particular can stay in their own homes or stay in assisted living homes, because they get better care that way at a lower cost with better outcomes for everyone.
Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Green Party. You can connect with us at facebook.com/live town hall. We'll take your questions. When a community doesn't like what a developer is proposing to do, they complain. They say, stop City Hall, stop City Hall. City Hall says, okay, you the people, the municipal people elected us. We're going to say stop. The developer then goes to the OMB.
That's right.
And then the OMB looks at it from their ivory tower, as some would say, and passes down a decision which is not necessarily complementary with the municipal governance or the people. So one of the questions here is Ronald, who says that the provincial government is looking into reforming the OMB, which is the Ontario Municipal Board. What does the Green Party stand, or where does the Green Party stand on the OMB? So now, I gave you a horrible example.
But no, it's fine, Michael. Important question, and so thanks for asking it. You know what? We've been calling for the OMP to be overhauled for years now, and this is another example of the three status quo parties at Queen's Park. I wish they could get their act together and put the people first, because the OMB is a perfect example of how we're allowing developers to have too much power. We want developers, we want them to be successful, we want them to build homes and businesses, but the bottom line is it's got to be done in a way that conforms to official plans and to provincial policy rules, and we can't have some unelected backroom body overturning decisions that communities make. That is wrong. The Green Party is going to fight to change it.
I believe it's July 1st, 2018, Prime Minister Trudeau stated that marijuana is going to be legalized. There's all kinds of dispensaries that have opened up all over Toronto, which is, for all intents and purposes, are selling illegal drugs in low quantities, but they've jumped the gun. We've already got dispensaries. Cashin wants to know, does the Green Party support the legalization of marijuana?
We support the legalization of marijuana, absolutely. I mean, we shouldn't be throwing people in jail for using a weed, a plant. And the one thing I want to be really clear about is the Green Party does not support the monopolization of marijuana sales. If this provincial government grants a monopoly to one of their big business friends, which tends to be something the Liberals do, we're going to fight that.
My understanding is there's a bunch of growers that feed into a co-op, and supposedly, from what I understand, I think it is Shoppers Drug Mart that has the official government acknowledgement to be the sales agent. But as I said, there's many dispensaries that are opening up now. Yeah. How would you tackle something like that? Would you be someone to want more supervision, more government control?
Yeah. So right now we don't know what the system is going to be, because the provinces have a year now to sort of figure this. Right, we got to figure that. We have a year to figure this out. So we want small businesses to have a stake in the game. This shouldn't be just a big Bay Street business ploy for them to maximize profits at the expense of small businesses. It needs to be regulated, needs to be safe, needs to have strict parameters around it. But why not let small businesses be in on the game? And while we're at it, you know what? Let's let those small craft brewers in Ontario be able to open their own beer stores as well. And how about our craft distillers? Why don't we let them open their own stores as well?
The one problem with marijuana is because it's such a controlled substance. As soon as you open the door to that, it's very hard to not let the horses out of the barn. They want to be able to control it because it is a controlled substance. Wouldn't you just invite more bureaucracy because you need more people to go around and make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do right? You know what?
Amsterdam, the Netherlands, is a perfect example of a country that's legalized marijuana for many years, regulated, controlled.
Small area, though.
But Ontario's not. Like, most people in Ontario live in southern Ontario anyway. I mean, come on.
70% of the population.
Let's let small businesses be a part of the game here. Let's not monopolize this and make it another big business cash grab.
Polly wants to know, what's your opinion on the best way for Ontario to tackle climate change? Do you believe in climate change, first of all? And if so, how do we... No, you got to ask the question, right?
Well, it's unfortunate you have to ask that question. I mean, who wouldn't believe in climate change right now?
You've seen the icebergs on the East Coast?
The rivers that are disappearing in the north. Actually, if you looked at your home insurance bill lately, the main driver of your home insurance bills going up is because of climate change. We're already experiencing the cost of climate change. Matter of fact, record costs every year. We have to tackle climate change. Unfortunately, the Liberals, they did the right thing by putting a price on carbon pollution. They chose the wrong pricing mechanism. The Green Party wants to put a price on carbon pollution in a way that puts money in your pocket. It's called carbon fee and dividend. Put a price on GHG pollution. All the money that's raised from that goes back to the people of Ontario as a dividend. You get a check every quarter, and then you can decide how you can best address climate change. Maybe you can afford to buy an electric vehicle. Maybe you want to buy a bike. Maybe you want to put new insulation in your house. Maybe you want to buy low carbon products. But it means money in your pocket, so we can fight climate change in a way that puts money in your pocket.
The last several weeks, I had occasion to travel through Guelph with an associate of mine who has a Tesla.
Yes.
And he was able to go in two locations in Guelph.
Absolutely.
And charge his vehicle. One time we were at lunch, and another occasion we had to drive Windsor back, so we were able to charge it. For a scenario like that, and particularly in Guelph, because I think it's a very good
number of charging stations.
Yes.
Absolutely.
What would you do to incentivize that and take what you've got in Guelph and roll it out into a larger base in Ontario?
Well, I mean, the province, to their credit, is starting to roll out charging stations. We're going to have to make sure they're available conveniently for people, and that we have they're set up in a way for quick charging stations. That's certainly going to be an important step forward. You know, a friend of mine in Guelph has an electric vehicle. I asked him how much it costs to run his car every year in fuel. You know what he told me? $30. $30, because he does a lot of the charging at the charging stations, and then when he has to charge at night, it costs so little to charge the car and drive it around, right?
But people don't realize it's the same coupling system as you would use for your dryer. You know, that three-pronged straight plug?
That's all it is.
So that's quick, and then they also have 120 volts, which is a regular, but that takes twice as long.
Takes longer,
but
you can still do it.
The infusion stations, you drive over top, and through electrical infusions through the bottom of the car, it's a quick charge.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing.
No, the technology that's coming forward is amazing, and that's the kind of technology we need to not only address climate change, but also to power Ontario's economy. The low carbon economy, the estimates are it's going to be a $6 trillion global economic opportunity. I want Ontario to lead that and create jobs and prosperity here fighting climate change.
You're watching tonight's live town hall. It is interactive and you can participate. Post your question on Facebook. We are reachable at facebook.com/live town hall. Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party. Joshua wants to know, asking about water rights, Nestle's, what are your thoughts? Now, we talked about that briefly about the Aberfoyle, but there's a bigger
issue, absolutely. The biggest challenge with water is that as climate change becomes a bigger and bigger issue, we're going to face more and more droughts. We've already been facing that in Guelph to some extent and other communities. And this is why it is so important to start right now to say that the number one priority for water taking in this province is public drinking water for communities. We have to put our drinking water first. Then you have a priority list. Growing food would probably come next. Value-added industrial activities, et cetera, et cetera. Things like bottled water and aggregate should be down towards the bottom of the list.
John asks a question, how do you differentiate yourself from the big three? You got the Liberals, you got the Conservatives, you got the NDP. They're always releasing, always doing something to get a seat in the legislature, get you elected, hopefully in Guelph.
Absolutely.
What differentiates you from the other three? Why the Green Party?
I think the thing that differentiates us more than, especially as I spend time at Queen's Park, is that we do politics differently. We're about honesty, integrity, and policies that work for people, and we put that ahead of our own political self-interest. I think so many people are just getting sick of the BS, the political spin, the political games, criticize to criticize, parties not working together, and we're saying, you know what? We don't want to be a part of that game. We want to change it, and we want to change it for the benefit of the people of Ontario. And I'm sick and tired of political pundits and so-called political experts telling me the Greens can't get elected because we're too honest. I call BS on that. I think the people of Ontario want a party that's not afraid to talk honestly about the issues and to be straight with them on our solutions.
So Angela's got a question and a comment. That's the way I'm going to phrase this. Angela says, the province is moving forward with rebuilding our aging nuclear fleet. The PCs and the Liberals support this. The NDP questions it, but no one is calling 100% renewable future. No nukes. Phase them out. When they come to an end of their lives, what do you say? Would you sign a petition to close Pickering? That's Angela. That's a loaded question on a couple.
Yeah, that is a good question, Angela. I tell you what, we need a political party at Queen's Park. We don't have one right now that's going to emphatically say no to the 180% price increase that OPG wants to rebuild nuclear plants. If you think the 70% increase we've experienced over the last decade has been tough, and it has been tough, too many people are having to choose between keeping the lights on and putting food on the table. Imagine what it's going to be like if the nuclear lobby gets their 180% price increase. We're saying no to that. We have lower cost solutions, water power from Quebec. New York State's closing down their outdated, expensive nuclear plant, replacing with low-cost water power from Quebec. Why isn't Ontario doing the same thing? We haven't even begun to invest in energy efficiency and conservation in this province. My dad on our farm used to say, Mike, we have to be energy efficient on this farm. We can save money by saving energy. People in New York State use energy 35% more efficiently than we do in Ontario. Let's fix that to save people money, save energy, and not waste $14 billion, which will probably turn into $32 billion, rebuilding the Darlington nuclear station.
So let's just take, that's a good point. You said 14 that comes into 30 billion. It's interesting that politicians never seem to be as fiscally responsible when they're in politics than if they're running their own business.
Yep.
You're an independent business owner. You still are. You won Business of the Year. I believe it was in Brampton. So you're an entrepreneur. Yeah. You know what it takes. What about all these over expenditures? What about these overages? What would you do if you got into Queen's Park and all of a sudden they open the kimono when you see the books?
Yeah, I will not allow it to happen. I will fight against it. And so let me ask any business owner out there, would you invest in a technology that's never delivered on time or on budget? No nuclear project in Ontario's history has ever delivered on time or on budget. I would say no to that. We can't afford it. It almost bankrupted the old Ontario Hydro. We can't allow this province to get bankrupted by investing in outdated technology. We have to invest in the technology of the future. And Angela had asked about keeping Pickering open. Mm-hmm. Would you drink milk past its best before date?
That
probably not,
yogurt, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So why are we keeping a nuclear plant open past its best before date? Pickering was supposed to be closed already. Then they extended it to 2018. Now they want to extend it to 2024, and it's producing power that we're selling at a loss. It makes no sense to me. Somebody at Queen's Park's got to say no to these powerful lobbyists that are putting their interest ahead of the people's interest. The Green Party will do that. That's how we do politics differently.
You're watching Live Town Hall. Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Green Party. You can reach us at facebook.com/Live Town Hall. My name is Michael A. Charmont, taking your questions. A comment. Bonnie says, hey, Mike, you're knocking it out of the park. Keep it up.
Thanks, Bonnie.
That's good. Well, you got to get encouragement. Matthew wants to know, what's your stance on the recent Liberal housing affordability plan?
Well, some of it we like, particularly the part of it that we were calling for, actually, which was a tax on vacant property, because housing should be for people, not for speculators. We should be taxing speculation. But my biggest concern is that they don't seize innovative opportunities. So what about housing in the middle? If you go to a number of European cities, for instance, they have all kinds of sort of mid-rise, what I call human scale density. We should be creating incentives for builders to build those kinds of units. We should be creating incentives for builders to build rental units so people can afford rent. We need to change zoning bylaws and things to allow things like granny suites, laneway housing, make it easier for people to put in basement apartments that are regulated and safe so we can better utilize our existing building stock, which is going to save us money and deal with housing affordability at the same time. What about
builders who are saying, Mike, if you do that, I'm not going to invest as a builder and build more units because electricity is going up, it's costing me more money, I have to charge more for rent. If you want me to speculate and put they're the first heavy lifters, right? How do you motivate builders to build more housing if you want to put restrictions on what they charge for rent?
We're not talking about putting restrictions on them. What we're talking about is opening up, creating incentives for builders to build things like housing in the middle, mid-rise density, human scale density. We're talking about making it easier for homeowners to put in granny suites and laneway housing and basement apartments so we can better utilize existing housing stock. What we're talking about is using our land more efficiently. We should be taxing based on land, not like based on how tall the building is. So that way builders have an incentive to build more dense buildings and taller buildings, so they're not penalized for it. We'd like to see a brownfield redevelopment fund to create incentives for builders to clean up and redevelop contaminated lands, to make it suitable and safe for housing. This is how we can solve the issue without tearing up more farmland or destroying the greenbelt and protecting those natural areas that we want to leave as a legacy for our children.
So Saul is drilling down here. He says, Saul states that the many municipalities in the GTA are sprawling, being Brampton is one example.
Absolutely,
He writes. What can be done to make sure that housing is intensified and that regular people can find affordable places to live? Now I'm going to hold you to this. How do you get Saul a place to live that he can afford, that isn't extra? What do you have to do to make that work? Do you have you have a particular tack that you're going to sail to get this done?
Yeah. So, like I said before, so first of all, taxing speculators, I think, makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And think about it. In Halton region, I think I read in the newspaper like 6,000 empty houses.
Yes.
And so, come on.
Well, that's where the non-resident.
There should be people living in those houses.
Investment and for flipping. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, but
right?
you know what? I mean, come on. Housing should be for people.
I'm not condoning it, but
no,
it's
no,
business,
I'm saying,
right?
Michael, but housing should be for people, okay? But we also need incentives through our tax system to reward builders for building dense buildings and for building rental units so people like Saul have a place to live. So then we address the supply problem that we're facing.
So how do we get Saul an apartment? I mean, how do we help Saul and the many other Sauls who are having problems finding an apartment that they can live in without not taking almost 2/3 of what their monthly wage is to try and do that?
Increase the supply of apartments by creating incentives
So
for
that's
builders. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Create incentives for builders. One of the great ways to do that is through land value taxation. So they're not penalized for building dense buildings.
But you don't want to take green space, right?
That exactly right.
So where do we take?
So that's why I'm saying brownfield redevelopment, infill. There's still a lot of space. I mean, if you think about it, the province has what's called the White Belt, and that's the land like right around Brampton and places like that. Only 20%
But the mayor
of
of
that.
Caledon will say
only
you best be careful
20%
not
of
to
that-
tread, because if you go any further, you're talking about the largest aggregate.
Don't want to go out into the greenbelt. Absolutely not. Alan's bang on. Alan and I agree on many things, and one of those is protecting farmland. He's a farmer. He understands how important it is. That's why we have to build on the land that's already been designated. You know what? Only 20% of the land that's developable, that's allowed for development, what's called the White Belt.
Yes.
Only 20% of it's being developed. So the problem isn't land availability. So don't allow the shock and awe of housing to convince you that we need to destroy farmland and the greenbelt, because we don't. We can do it on the existing land we have, and we need to provide developers with the right incentives to be able to build on that land.
So Eric says that the federal government doesn't seem ready for electoral reform. Well, they just made an announcement, actually, that they're not.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you think Ontario is ready for an overhaul, and how would you elect a government with representatives?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the Prime Minister played such a cynical move by breaking his promise to bring in a better democracy, and so that every vote would count. I want to live in a country where Parliament reflects the democratic will of the people of Canada, where every vote counts, where you don't get 100% of the power with only 38% of the vote. If you're upset with what Kathleen Wynne's doing, like privatizing Hydro One, which I think is a total mistake, 80% of Ontarians are opposed to it. She only got 38% of the vote, but because she has 100% of the power, she can do something like privatize Hydro One. So we are absolutely for electoral reform. We want every vote to count. We want a better democracy in Ontario and across Canada.
So Jeff wants to know, I'd like to find out more about the Green Party's stance on factory farming in Ontario and update Ontario and Canadians about outdated animal cruelty laws. We're talking about pig farms, we're talking about chicken farms, all the rest of that. I mean, industrial farming is a fact of life for farmers. What's your stance on that?
You know what? Factory farming is a much bigger problem in the U.S. than it is in Canada. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons it's not as big a problem in Canada is because of our supply management system that supports small family farmers.
Well, we don't have a Cargill here either. I mean, that's
well, Cargill does operate here. You don't see the huge mega farms like you do in the U.S. Though we do have some fairly large facilities here in Ontario as well.
What's your stance on that? And Jeff says something about cruelty of animals too.
So we need laws in place that are against animal cruelty. Mm-hmm. You know what? It's so much better to have free range, free run. You get a better quality product, better for the environment, better for your health, better for the animals. And I'll have to say, is also that we're going to have to start reducing our meat consumption. And I know a lot of people don't like saying that, but if we're going to address climate change, we are going to have to reduce our meat consumption.
Well,
I'm not saying you have to eliminate it, but I'm saying we're going to have to reduce it. And we can do that in a way that supports farmers. And that's exactly what the Green Party is about, is supporting farmers to produce food for people in a way that's profitable for them and contributes to our health.
So back to the housing question. Bob has a good question. He asks, how much control should the provincial government have over people's ability to buy a house or a rental property?
Yeah, I think people should be free to buy a house and rent a house. Like, I mean, I don't think we should control it.
What Bob is trying to say is, if you want to buy a house,
right,
and you want to purchase that house as a second domicile, you live in one, and this is a second domicile, and you want to be able to rent that out as a rental property, so that ideally the premise is that the rental money that is being generated covers your mortgage with a little bit.
Absolutely. People should be totally free to do that. Absolutely.
So how do you mitigate?
So when you talk about the speculation tax,
right,
that's on vacancy. So it's one thing, if you buy a house and you rent it out, you shouldn't be taxed for that. I'm totally opposed to that.
But when you sell the house, you pay capital gains because you didn't live in it.
Well, there is that. That is true. That is true. I think that's reasonable because it's an investment and you pay capital gains on investments. Right. I don't think you should.
But what we're saying is someone who buys a house and sits on it vacant until the house prices go up, waits 3 months and makes $100,000 on it. That's.
Well, I think 3 months is probably a shorter time frame than we're talking about. We're looking at so you buy a house, you sit on it, let's say a year. So it sits empty. You should pay a tax on it.
Wow, you got to have deep pockets to handle 2 mortgages. I don't know if people would sit on it for a year. I don't know, that's not me.
Well, then what about all these empty houses that are around? You've seen this in Vancouver, you've seen it in the Greater Toronto area. I don't think they should be sitting on empty houses like that.
Jing says the important issue is higher auto insurance rates.
Yes.
Where's the 15% Liberals promised during the election?
Yeah. The Liberals are very good at promising things during elections and then not delivering on them. The auto insurance rates is one of them. I mean, one of the things we have to look at doing is we have to get fraud out of the system. I know that's one of the big expenses that insurance companies face, and it's one of the things driving up costs in Ontario. And the other thing is, province has got to get tough with insurance companies and just say, you know what, you're a regulated industry. Here are the rules. You got to abide by these rules to cut down on costs.
You're watching Town Hall Live. My name is Michael A. Charbon here with Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party. You can reach us at facebook.com/live town hall. Lots of questions here. Let's see if we can just go through a couple.
Sure.
I'll shut up, sorry, and I'll just fire them off here. Rob says the Liberals are stating that they're going to have a balanced budget. Is the budget really balanceable if the assets like Hydro One have to be sold?
Yeah, well, you know what? I think it is wrong to sell off Hydro One to balance the budget or to even fund transit. And this gets back to what I was talking about having an honest conversation with people. Magic money and fairy dust is not going to pay for transportation infrastructure or transit in this province. The Green Party is the only party that's willing to look people in the face and say, you know what? We're going to have to start putting a price on roads. We're going to have to bring in a levy on parking spaces. You're talking about
tolls?
We're talking road tolls. We support road
you're not
pricing.
Be a very light guy.
Let me tell you something, Michael. Since when did conservatives give up on markets? When did they stop not liking markets anymore? Because all road pricing is a market mechanism to efficiently allocate road space, and then you take that money and you invest it in highways and you invest it in transit.
Mike, we're trying to get you elected, dude.
Hey, Michael, I tell you what. You know what, Michael?
Wow.
We got to be honest with people. Magic money and fairy dust isn't going to build transit. And I'm sick and tired of politicians pretending that it will, and then it doesn't happen. Then they do something stupid like sell off Hydro One.
I
don't think that's right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be straight up with people. No more BS, straight talk.
Okay, Craig says you're talking about medium-sized agricultural operations. What would the Green Party of Ontario do to support small farms and local food sources like farmers' markets?
Yeah, so I'm a big supporter of farmers markets, absolutely. So opening up, there was a time when there were actually restrictions on farmers markets being opened in parks and things like that. Let's get rid of those restrictions. Let's have farmers markets everywhere. We want farmers markets. One of the biggest challenges in the local food system is that we're losing so many of our small scale and medium sized processors. And a lot of that's due to regulation. So the regulations are written for the large, big food companies, and then you try to apply them to the small companies and it doesn't work. So we need what the Green Party calls is smart regulations. One set of regulations for the big guys and another set of regulations that are more appropriate for smaller farmers. Another thing that a lot of people aren't talking about is that regulations on farms themselves are tough too.
Yes.
And a lot of those are environmental regulations, and I support good environmental stewardship on the farm. I know my dad as a farmer was a good steward of the farm, so why aren't we paying farmers for environmental goods and services that benefit society? Instead of putting a cost on them, let's reward them for being good stewards, which we know they are.
So Wendy says, I live in a small town in Ontario called Keene. My delivery costs are 3 times more than the hydro I use.
Yep.
Is there anything we can do about eliminating the cost, at least to cut it down so it's less than what it costs now? We seniors are having problems making our pensions stretch to pay for the cost of daily living.
Yeah, I tell you what, no one should have to choose between putting food on the table and paying their hydro bill. And the Liberals have allowed this to get out of control, and particularly around distribution charges. And I feel for people in rural Ontario who live in rural remote areas. We've been calling for a levelizing of the distribution differential. It makes no sense that rural people are penalized so much. We have one grid. We all contribute to that grid, and we should all pay for it in a fair way. But the other thing we have to start looking at is, what are some other innovative solutions? So, instead of wasting billions on outdated nuclear plants, why don't we take that money and help people, like in rural areas, for instance, who are on electric baseboard heating, which is incredibly expensive?
Yep.
Why not help them convert to air source heat pumps? A clean, green solution that will help them save money today, tomorrow, 10, 15 years down in the future. That's how we can help you lower your electricity bills, not this $25 billion Band-Aid that Kathleen Wynne has put out there that is going to be the most expensive Band-Aid in Ontario's history. It's going to take money away from things like health and education, social services, transit, transportation infrastructure to cover up their mistake. And let's come up with a real solution, and that's what the Green Party is advocating for.
Tonight's interactive event is brought to you by Live Town Hall. You can reach us at Facebook/Live Town Hall. So a comment from John says, Lauren Goldstein of the Toronto Sun endorsed the Ontario Green Party for your plan of climate change. And David writes a question, your party in the past has supported road tolls and fund infrastructure. What do you think of Wynne's government's shameful rejection of Toronto Mayor Tory's sensible plan to slap tolls on consumers who hope to use the Gardiner Expressway to the DVP?
I tell you what, I admire John Tory for having the courage to be honest with people about paying for highways and paying for transit. And I think it's shameful and appalling that the Premier threw the Mayor of Toronto under the bus. So John, keep fighting. The Green Party's behind you. We want to build transit in the GTA, and we want to be honest with people about how to pay for it. We support your policies to price roads.
Eric,
I was just going to say, the one person who asked about climate change,
yes.
I think the reason Lori Goldstein likes our plan is because it's it's using market mechanisms to solve climate change in a way that puts money in your pocket. Charge for carbon pollution, take the revenue, put it in your pocket with a dividend check. You can start addressing poverty and the climate crisis, which I think are two of our biggest issues right now, growing income inequality and the climate crisis. Those are probably our two biggest challenges. Our carbon fee and dividend program starts addressing both of them.
Do you think, Eric asks, that pumped storage hydroelectric has a place in Ontario?
Absolutely it does.
What is that?
Yeah, so what you can do is, so when you're producing additional electricity, let's say wind turbines overnight, you can then hold water behind a dam, and then let's say during the next day when the electricity demand's up, you release it. That's one of the reasons actually Quebec's a great trading partner with Ontario. I understand why the Liberals aren't buying low-cost water power from Quebec. It makes so much sense, but I guess common sense doesn't work for the Liberals, does it?
Sam wants to know, do you think you should be in the leaders' debate next year?
Absolutely, the Green Party should be in the leaders' debate. Well, first of all, we're the only party without a seat at Queen's Park that runs a candidate in every riding. The other thing is we actually qualified for the public per vote allowance. So the Green Party is now receiving public funding like the Liberals and the NDP and the Conservatives because our vote total is high enough. I think the people of Ontario, They deserve to know how their money's being spent. I want to be held accountable. I want you to know how our party is spending that per vote allowance. And so you deserve and have a right to know where we stand on the issues.
I have to say that Live Town Hall is very proud to be a recipient of your attention and to give the people of Ontario an opportunity to give a question to someone like you. And we encourage the other networks and other people to give you the platform to be able to speak to them, as we are doing here, and as we encourage you to interact with us. Live Town Hall is all about your questions, and it's all about talking to interesting people. Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Green Party, right here live, and that's the only place you're going to see him. You can reach us at facebook.com/live town hall.
Hey, Michael, can I give you a quick shout out on that? I think it's important that you're giving the people of Ontario an opportunity to hear from all four of the major party leaders. And so good on you for doing that.
Well, I have to, I'm but a very small cog in a large organization. We had the opportunity to have time with Andrew Horvath, with Patrick Brown, and yourself. And I think it's very important that people have the opportunity to ask questions.
Absolutely.
What are you going to do if we elect you?
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important. And I appreciate your enthusiasm and your candor. It's refreshing to see a politician to say, I stand for this, and I'm going to say it to you right now.
I'm not afraid to tell you honestly where I stand on the issues.
Kate says the Ontario debt is so high. What would a Green Party government do to balance Ontario's budget and begin the journey forward to fiscal sustainability? Great question.
Absolutely, good question. Well, I mean, first of all, let's not blow $14 to $32 billion on rebuilding outdated nuclear plants, investing in technology that's never delivered on time or on budget. I don't think we can afford it, and it makes no sense financially. Secondly, stop the privatization of Hydro One. The Financial Accountability Officer said it's a money loser for the province. Let's not even go there.
$408 billion the Ontario government is in debt,
That's
or
right.
the province of Ontario, largest sovereign debt in the world.
Exactly, of any subnational government.
Yes.
The other thing we have to start looking at is our education system. Is do we really need two separate publicly funded school boards? Can we bring those together and invest the savings in our classrooms? We think that makes sense. And finally, Michael, I think we have to look at raising the corporate tax rates on the biggest Bay Street corporations, because we have the lowest corporate tax rate of any jurisdiction.
But Donald Trump just reduced this to attract business. You want to raise it?
No. Our corporate tax rates are lower than the U.S. Lower than the U.S.
But that's
and
good,
it hasn't resulted in additional investment. So what I want to say is, let's raise them on the very big businesses, the largest businesses, and then let's lower them.
But they're
then let's lower them on the small businesses that create jobs. Let's lower.
I'm not here to debate you. I'm here to ask
Let's
questions.
lower payroll taxes on small businesses so they can create more jobs.
Amy says, I'm happy to see that there's no more corporate or union donations in Ontario. Have these financial reforms gone far enough?
You know what? Well, first of all, I'm proud that the Green Party led the charge to get big money out of Ontario politics. I think it's unprecedented, really, in Ontario's history that a party without a seat at Queen's Park led the charge on such an important piece of legislation. So now corporate and union donations are banned from political parties, and the donation limits have gone from over $30,000 a year down to $3,600 a year. I think that's still too high. The Green Party's been saying donation limit should be under 1,000. It shouldn't be 3,600. It should be under 1,000. But you know what? We've made huge progress in getting big money out of politics. And can I just do a quick shout out to the thousands and thousands of people who signed letters and sent petitions to the Premier that the Green Party put out there saying get big money out of politics. It's because of you. It's because of you speaking out. That's why the Liberals finally had to act.
About 8 minutes left. You're watching Live Town Hall with the leader of the Ontario Green Party, Mr. Mike Schreiner. You can reach us at Facebook at facebook.com/Live Town Hall. Adrian says, what do you think is the most important thing the Ontario government can do to ensure that we have sufficient health services available for the ailing baby boomers who over the next 20 or 30 years? Also a good question.
Excellent question. I tell you what, this is exactly why we need a well-funded, thoughtful, and well-implemented aging at home strategy. We need to create programs that help seniors stay in their home, help those who need to be in assisted living or co-op housing to have those opportunities, because it's far less expensive than long-term care or hospital care, it provides better care, and it's that kind of aging at home strategy we want for our seniors. We also need to make sure we have case managers for seniors to help them navigate the healthcare system, to prevent them from, help prevent illness and to help them navigate through the system in an efficient and effective way.
I believe in the next election you're going to be running in the Guelph area.
Yes,
And
I
interestingly
love
enough, a
Guelph.
question from Richard says, I've heard a lot about the GTA. What are you going to do about jobs in rural and small town Ontario?
Oh, fantastic question. I mean, first of all, we have to protect farmland, which is the asset base of the economic engine of rural Ontario. The other thing we need to do is actually invest in rural broadband. I tell you what, in today's world, you can work anywhere as long as you have a good internet connection for many people. And so why not create opportunities for people in rural communities? But if they don't have good rural broadband internet, it's going to be hard for them. This is also why we have to
Mayor
get...
Calden was talking about that without broadband in his area, that it is a hindrance to bring business and to
Absolutely.
business that's existing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So instead of putting all the jobs in Toronto, which to me makes no sense, we should spread those jobs around. But in order to do that, we need rural broadband.
Glenn says the United Nations has deemed Ontario's support of a separate school system for only one religion, Roman Catholic, to be wrong. It seems obvious the support of one religion to the exclusion of all others is wrong. Why then has no political party in Ontario made it a campaign plank to remove this inequity? Wow.
Well, actually, one party has. The Green Party has. But again, you know what? This is what I mean about doing politics differently, Michael. The other parties are afraid to have an honest conversation with people because it's all about these political calculations about how we can get elected. And you know what? Some people say maybe that's preventing us from getting elected, being honest with people. But I want people to know is if we're going to change the system, if you're sick of what's going on at Queen's Park, you're sick of the games, you're sick of the political spin, you're sick of the self-interested politicians, then we have to start supporting a political party like the Green Party that's willing to be honest with you and being honest about tackling tough issues like our school boards.
Anna writes, do you agree with the proposed growth plan changes that would allow intensification of settlement areas that do not have a delineated build-up area? These rural settlement areas were not given a build boundary as they were never intended to be a focus of growth.
Yeah, so what we need is what I call smart intensification, and we need intensification with some flexibility for smaller communities. I don't want to see urban boundaries extended because I want to protect farmland and green space, but we also need to give municipalities, particularly those not like in downtown Toronto or Brampton, Mississauga, within the heart of the GTA, right, some flexibility of how they do intensification so it's done smartly and it's done in a way that's appropriate for those communities.
Eric comes back to the nuclear question. He asks, would you support nuclear if it was, or when it was, prefabricated small-scale reactors?
I tell you what, if you can deliver a technology that's proven, that shows that it can be done sustainably, and what I mean by that is you don't have long-term nuclear waste that you have to pay to deal with for millions of years, and it can be done in a way that comes in on budget and on time, then I would be open to it. But the reality is we already have lower cost solutions available to us right now. Wind is cheaper than rebuilt nuclear. Water power is less expensive. Energy efficiency and conservation.
Solar? Are you hip on
solar's
solar?
Coming down. Absolutely. You know what? 5 years ago,
solar, yeah.
5 years ago to put in like a 10 kilowatt solar system would cost you $90,000.
Like a flat screen TV, right?
Now it's $20,000 and going down. The price of solar is going down so fast. So the Ontario government made this crazy idea. They got in when it was expensive, and now they're getting out now that it's becoming less expensive. So buy high and get out when it's low makes no sense to me whatsoever.
So would you subsidize panels? Would you subsidize wind power generation?
You know what? We're at a point now where they don't need to be subsidized anymore. So I think in the early days,
That's a refreshing answer, Mike.
No, seriously. In the early
It
days,
is, seriously.
Seriously. In the early days, a little bit of subsidy helped. I mean, if you think about it, the oil and gas industry still gets huge subsidies, like billions of dollars in subsidies. They've been around for over a century. So it took wind and solar, a few years of some subsidies to get down to prices that are very, very low. So now let's take advantage of those low prices, not do what the Liberals are doing and abandon the program, or do what the Conservatives are doing and want to rip up contracts and things like this. Let's actually take advantage of these declining prices.
So I'm going to take one more question, and I'm going to let you wrap up. You're watching
Michael.
Live Town Hall with Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Green Party. One last question. James says, what about transition care for young adults? Too many encounter problems that lead them into poverty and high-risk situations. There is a false economy and a legal and ethical hypocrisy that is in play when we abandon a young person in need of a moment they turn 18 instead of ensuring extra supports are put in place. Where do you sit on that? That's quite a deep question, actually.
That is a deep question. Well, I mean, first of all, for young people who are experiencing challenges, they should continue to get support past 18. I mean, I think that's just the decent thing to do for people. The broader question, I think, of the fact that youth unemployment is way too high in this province. We have to do something about it. We have to invest in our young people. We have a number of solutions around that. One is let's support apprenticeship and co-op programs. Let's support a basic income guarantee so young people know they've got economic security. Let's create an innovation fund, which the Green Party's been talking about, to help young people start their own business, to innovate, to be entrepreneurs. Let's start tackling youth unemployment because that's our future.
It is. I want to end on a positive note and a positive question. I want to talk about, Lori brings up from Brampton, says, do you support safe cycle infrastructure to promote active transportation? Cycling, getting people out of the cars instead of walking, cycling. Where does the Green Party stand? Because cycling is a very important thing that can transform many cities.
Yeah, I tell you what, Michael, I was just meeting with a number of people in Brampton today and was just struck by how many people wanted to talk about cycling. And I understand Brampton just got a cycling award from the Share the Road Cycling Coalition. So congratulations, Brampton.
I didn't know it took place today. So we have there's many parks and areas and trails here where you can enjoy them.
Absolutely. So what we need is we need more safe cycling and walking infrastructure. The Green Party's been calling for 2% of the transportation budget to be dedicated to cycling and walking infrastructure. Only 2%? Most of you are probably saying, Mike, that's way too low. You're right, it is way too low. You know how much of the transportation budget's dedicated for cycling and walking right now? Zero.
Well, we still have
There's some one-time grants.
I hate to be
There's
the
some
spoiler.
one-time.
We still have winter.
But Michael, 2% of the budget. Come on, 2% of the transportation budget to go
I think it's right though.
I mean, to way more people would cycle and walk if it was safe to do so. And studies show it's actually good for small businesses because when people are cycling and walking, they're more likely to stop and shop at small businesses instead of big box stores.
So we're just about at the tail end here, almost 8 o'clock. I want to give you an opportunity to just speak to the folks of Ontario. Hopefully to see you sign up with Mike Schreiner in Guelph. As the leader of the Green Party, you were elected in 2009, still to have a seat.
That's right.
But here at Live Town Hall, we wanted to give you an opportunity to talk directly to the folks in Ontario and tell them why the Green Party is the fourth option and one that they should consider.
Well, I tell you what, first of all, come to Guelph and visit. More small businesses per capita than anywhere else. It's the clean tech leader in Ontario and the best place to buy a home. So come to Guelph and visit one day.
We got good football there.
And we have good football and good hockey as well.
You do.
But I tell you what, I think people are sick of the status quo at Queen's Park. People are sick of the political spin. They're sick of politicians not being honest with them. They're sick of the political games. And I think they want honesty, integrity, and policies that put people first. And that's what the Green Party is all about. And so if you want change, and I believe people do want change, then I encourage you to vote for a new party that's going to deliver new ideas and a new way of doing politics that put you, the people of Ontario, first. That's my commitment. That's what I'm going to fight for. I'm going to fight for you against the special interests.
Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Green Party. We would like to thank the members of Brampton Focus who made this possible. Paul Vicente, Don McLeod, and Fazil Khan, and the remainder of Brampton Focus, because Live Town Hall is brought to you by Live Town Hall. My name is Michael A. Charbon. It was a pleasure being with you. Look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thanks for watching.